It's been an action-packed week in the sphere of business, both locally and globally. Now, as UBC Business, we bring you some of the stories that have been trending. Now, straight into the first story. The Uganda Communications Commission is upbeat that the public will gradually appreciate the benefits of paying the social media tax. The Manager Consumer Affairs of UCC, Ibrahim Bossa, also revealed that the various meetings with stakeholders will be lined up so as to better the appreciation of the tax, which is currently on a test and learn stage.
On July 1st, Ugandans came to reality of the need to pay a new tax, which has been dubbed the social media tax, so as to access their favored social media platforms. This tax of 200 Ugandan shillings is to be levied on over 7 million active social media users in Uganda on a daily basis. The decision to introduce this tax was informed by the need to widen the tax base. To better the mode of collection and close all the loopholes, Uganda Communications Commission and the Tax Collectors Uganda Revenue Authority have lined up a string of review meetings.
To find out the status, to make sure that everybody concerned has implemented the directives. For example, that all operators have actually blocked access to social media and can give access upon payment of 200 shillings as a tax, that they have provided the mechanisms that are convenient for people to be able to access social media after paying the tax, that we are creating awareness for people to understand why is this tax coming up and probably how is this tax going to help the country. It has also required that there will be a review meeting in 2 weeks' time to see the progress at that point in time, to see what are the challenges both implementers and also the public may be facing.
Some crafty Ugandans have resorted to using the virtual private networks so as to access the social media platforms. According to UCC, taking advantage of the loopholes in the system will not help much.
What the government has done is to impress upon telecom operators to be able to block the use of VPNs accessing social media. Now the issue is the VPNs are very many and probably they mushroom every day. Okay, so somebody may have to be on top of their game to always know that this VPN was blocked and this is the VPN that is accessible. And people will be able to do that, okay? However, people also need to understand that accessing VPN opens you to a host of different challenges and risks.
Going forward, the Commission also wants telecom companies to engage these international companies that provide over-the-top services so as to absorb the taxes or even list in Uganda.
From the look of things, there seems to be no turning back as regards the implementation of this so-called social media tax that has sent the public ranting. The regulatory body, Uganda Communications Commission, has just met telecom companies and all other stakeholders in the implementation of this tax. And tomorrow, the first ever report detailing the challenges and the achievements of this tax will be presented to Uganda Revenue Authority and Uganda Communications Commission. This whole process brings to life the old saying that in this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes. And maybe the fact that I'm Samuel Senono, reporting for UBC TV News in Kampala.
Still about the taxes, the public continues to lament over the new tax measures targeting the mobile money transactions. With close to 6% levied per transaction, analysts, on the other hand, are casting doubt on Uganda's 100% financial inclusion agenda.
Mobile money is a service that was initially designed to promote financial inclusion, but now it has evolved to a service that can be tapped into to broaden the tax base. A few weeks ago, it was a tax proposal for the new financial year, and majority of the public had their fingers crossed that the president will not approve it.
From the budget reading, we learned that mobile money excise duty is going to be increased from 10% to 15%. This is definitely going to increase the cost of mobile money.
However, that wasn't to be.
These are innovations. It's an innovation that has been working for some time and has always been beneficial to the nation. Now, something which has been working, favoring people, you are blowing it aside. You are blowing aside. At the end of the day, we shall remain with nothing, and we shall be as if pushing us back to 90s or to 80s, which we do not want, and we are not part of, and we are not interested in.
Just recently, the Financial Sector Deepening Uganda released a report showing 25% improvement of financial inclusion in a decade. Mobile money platform was singled out as the main catalyst of the transformation.
Looking at the year when we last had the FinCorp survey, that's 2013, formal financial inclusion grew from 52 to 58%. And that one was also followed by a reduction in the informal financial inclusion from 28 to about 20%. And that has been facilitated by, among other things, the movement of people or the adoption of mobile payment systems, and specifically mobile money. We see some drop in the use of banking services, as some people are taken from banks to mobile money, and some other people are picked from the formally informal to mobile money. Mobile money is looked at as one of the formal forms of financial inclusion.
The expansion in coverage of mobile money and innovations has been such an expose in the development circles, particularly due to its ability to bring the poor people in their various categories to participate in the financial market. With about 5.8% charged per transaction, analysts say the financial inclusion struggle in Uganda is real.
The people who will be affected the most are those who do large transactions, because then you're able to pay quite a bit.
Since its introduction in Uganda in 2009, mobile money has helped expand formal financial services to populations that were previously excluded.
1 out of every 2 adults in Uganda are actually using mobile money, compared to 1 out of 10 of Ugandans who actually have bank accounts or using bank accounts in a commercial bank. So we can clearly see that there's a really big gap between the people that are using mobile money and those that are using banking. And we know that banking has also adopted mobile banking. So we are yet to fully understand, and of course with time we should be able to see whether this figure shall reduce or whether this figure shall stay the same.
In 2013, 56% of Uganda's adult population was using mobile money services, and by 2016, the value of mobile money transactions had reached a whopping 3.6 trillion shillings, a figure that is now projected to have surpassed 4 trillion shillings in 2017. SIGOA for UBC News in Kampala.
And now more about the taxes. Members of Parliament want the Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2018 reviewed, owing lack of consultation and procedures of amendment. Some members of Parliament saying passing of the bill was on the basis of collective responsibility, which was a mistake not called for.
It is imperative that we look at it much earlier before we get a lot of backlash. And apparently I remember the Minister of Finance saying that 0.5% would do. So if we said it, why can't we review it and maybe come to that?
If there would be any opportunity to overturn this, I think I would support it.
On May 30th, Parliament passed the Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2018 that imposed a 200 shillings daily tax levy on social media platforms and a 1% tax levy on mobile money transactions. This sought to generate revenue from untaxed items so as to broaden the tax base of the country.
Honourable members, according to our law on the budget,
the 3 days of implementation of the amendment has resulted into a blame game. Some members of Parliament faulted the idea of collective responsibility that paved the way for the amendment.
A collective responsibility, a proposal from Cabinet, and of course which unfortunately as Parliament we passed. So for me I would think if I don't listen to the voices of economy, so many people came up, economists, people who are experts in the taxation area. So we don't even have need to go to the constituency if I don't really But now maybe we rushed into it. And
maybe there is this other wave of like people saying we have to support everything. You know, we have here members of parliament who say that whichever comes from the government side, they must support, even without understanding the context.
The blame game among legislators seems to drag some MPs for not forecasting the likely consequences of the amendment. The amendment was passed without scrutiny by MPs and without consulting the public, compelling members to ask Parliament to revise the amendment.
If in this financial year 2018-2019, the tax is not reviewed, for us as members of Parliament, we have a very good window. We can review and reduce the taxes in the ensuing financial years.
The system of passing resolutions or any laws or bills in Parliament, we are over 450 members of Parliament, and usually the Speaker will ask those in support to say yes and to the contrary no. So according to what the Speaker has heard is what will take the day. In this case, sincerely speaking, I didn't support.
Social media apps that are bound to this tax include Skype, WhatsApp, Facebook, Viber, and Twitter. Meanwhile, all mobile money transactions, including deposits, sending and withdrawing, are all charged a 1% tax.
See much of the opposition a result of failure to understand the importance of taxation. And really, it's government's responsibility to come out and educate.
It is important to note that to revise the Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2018, the public will have to wait for the next financial year. Susan Naonga reporting.
Now, obviously, one of the affected stakeholders of the measures have been the banks. The banking fraternity has criticized the new excise duty levied on the formal financial sector. The executive director of the Uganda Bankers Association, Wilbred Awor, argues that the tax measures will affect adversely the financial inclusion agenda and in addition increasing the costs of living.
The fiscal year 2018-19 budget has turned out to be the most unpopular in various aspects. Since the new tax measures came into force a few days ago, there's been a general public outcry and condemnation. Uganda Bankers Association has made it categorically clear that they do not support government's new tax measures targeting the formal financial sector. Patrick Mwehere, the chairman UBA, says government should seek smarter measures of revenue collection without hurting its people.
A lot of the few cows that make money have been over-milked, and the government is trying to figure out a way in which to reach the bottom of the pyramid. Now, you may disagree with the mobile money tax, and I think many of us will say that that is very disruptive, but that's the challenge they're trying to solve. So I'm a little bit sympathetic with the goals. I may not agree with the method, many of us may not agree, but I think let's have a debate about how we all pay our fair share.
The bankers' displeasure comes hot on the heels of increasing pressure on government to review its decision and scrap the new tax measures of mobile money and commercial banks.
You know that excise duty was moved from 10 to 15% for all of the transactions. So it is not only in the telecoms. It makes financial services more expensive, isn't it? And we are saying, let's reach more people. Let's reduce the cost of financial services. So on the one hand, we say this, and then the tax makes it expensive. So I think the problems are cutting across not only the telecoms, but the banking services.
Although the mobile money platform has disrupted the operations of the mainstream banking sector, its impact on enhancing financial inclusion is profound, argues Wilbred Awor, the executive director, Uganda Bankers Association.
All mobile money transactions are mirrored in an account in the bank called the float account. So it is in our interest that it thrives. I want to be very categorical that we are together in supporting financial inclusion. And therefore taxes that risk constraining and making services mobile or banking, mobile money or banking or otherwise, constrain financial inclusion. Okay? And we risk reversing the gains we are making as a country in bringing more people into the formal financial system.
It is against this backdrop that the bankers will be converging in Kampala on the 17th of this month to discuss issues pertaining to financial sector stability amidst a fast-changing environment. SIGOA for UBC News.
Away from the taxes, we take you to Jinja, where the Speaker of Parliament is to devote the first 4 months of the third session of Parliament for legislation. According to Kadaga, the outstanding bills will be handled in the period, and Kadaga made the commitment recently in Jinja town while unveiling the new NSSF Savers House.
The new home in Jinja is part of the National Social Security Fund real estate portfolio. At the launch of the building, the NSSF Managing Director, Richard Byarugaba, urged government to make reforms that will spur the growth of the pension sector.
The reason why interest rates continue to be very high is because there is more money in the short term from commercial banks than in the long term from places like the NSSF. So I think it's important that government really pays attention to what happens within the pension sector and reforms the rules that govern pensions such as ourselves, as contained in a couple of the bills, including the one to reform NSSF, that are lying before Parliament.
With over 10 trillion shillings at its disposal, NSSF feels their capacity to invest is impeded by stringent policies. Capital-intensive areas of investment, such as infrastructural development, may have significant returns on the long term for the savers.
Why can't NSSF make investments in the oil pipeline? Why can't NSSF invest money in the refinery and all the other big projects that government is looking at? They could do this through providing infrastructure bonds, which would subscribe to and also invite in other foreign investors.
The Speaker of Parliament, Rebecca Kadaga, promised that most of the tabled bills will be handled in the first 4 months of the third session of Parliament.
So all those things which have been outstanding will be handled. And the Ministry of Finance has been notorious for bringing bills, withdrawing them, amending them, coming back, going away. So I really hope that this time they'll sit down with us and make the law.
She urged NSSF to help the needy who may want to access their money before the stipulated age.
The law says you cannot get the money until you are 60. I think you need 50. I think you need to have a more human face. And I hope that with the amendments that are coming, people will get their money. Because what's the point of me being sick? I have my savings, I die, and then it's taken by my relatives.
SIGOA for UBC News in Jinja.
Now, in the field of agriculture, the Uganda Coffee Development Authority and the Uganda Development Bank have signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at accelerating the production and export of coffee. The partnership is expected to go a long way in enabling the coffee subsector to achieve the target of producing 20 million bags of coffee by 2025. The initiative is in the line with the coffee roadmap launched by the President of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni.
The key bottlenecks to coffee production in Uganda include access to quality inputs, sufficient extension services or insufficient extension services, access to affordable and suitable funding along the value chain, especially for the smallholder farmers, climate challenges, pests and diseases, low capacity development among farmers. The relationship being sealed today between UDB and UCDA is therefore looking at providing solutions to the bottlenecks to coffee production as enumerated above.
We have 68% of the farmers who are below the poverty line, and I think the financing in a value chain like coffee is very, very key. And we as a value chain in coffee, starting from production, through quality, marketing, and research, promoting research is very key that we really need the financing. And we are proud to be working already with the UDB, even before the MOU is signed.
Now, as we come towards the end of the business wrap-up, we take you to the regional news. Customers of the ride-hailing apps Uber and Taxify in Kenya were left frustrated by the strike of the company's drivers protesting the company's low rates and high commissions that they say forced them to work long hours for little money.
Elsewhere in East Africa, Uber drivers in the capital Nairobi downed the tools in protest against reduced fares implemented by the company. The online transportation firm basically allows you to book and pay for a taxi on your smartphone. Uber is cutting rates here in Kenya by up to 35% to boost demand for its services amid growing local competition. The American company says the reduced fares are actually in the drivers' interest. They argue that it will attract more customers and more traffic and therefore hopefully more revenue for the drivers. Management also say they consulted drivers before implementing the rate cut. But drivers, as you can see, are clearly not happy. In fact, they're threatening to switch to other transport companies altogether.
The reason we are here, it's because we have been grieved. And it is about the issue of cutting fares. And being a driver partner, I was not consulted. And that is one of the major reasons why we have decided to come on the street. Not because we don't love Uber. It's a good company, it's a good technology company, and we love working with it.
They cannot just come in, dominate, and take over people and make people be their slaves. And our main point is that Uber needs to have an alternate option whereby we're gonna switch off all the driver online, and we're gonna go to another platform, which is Little Cabs, and they are ready for us as of we speak now.
And finally, on the international scene, the trade tensions with the United States continue to mount globally. Canada says it will not back down after unveiling its own duties in response to the US's steel and aluminium tariffs. They take effect this weekend, while next week the US and China are set to impose the latest tariffs on each other.
Yes, as expected, Canada unveiling fully its $12.5 billion worth of tariffs on US goods, everything from whiskey, sleeping bags, motorboats and toilet paper, can you believe? Perhaps that's an indication of the disgust that they have of what they're retaliating to, which of course is the US steel and aluminum tariffs brought in on the flimsy national security grounds, which very much offended Canada. And Canada's foreign minister said they are willing to negotiate, but also will stand firm.
We will not escalate, and we will not back down. The solution to this unprecedented dispute is for the United States to rescind its tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, which do not pose any kind of security threat to the United States.
Friday was also meant to be the day that the US unveiled much-awaited investment restrictions on Chinese companies trying to access technology and also export controls. But remember, there was an about-face in midweek when the Trump administration said that they would instead rely on legislation moving through the US Congress. But remember, we're not out of the woods yet. A week from this Friday, tariffs will be imposed by the US on $34 billion worth of Chinese goods, a 25% tariff, which China will match if there is not some breakthrough, and we could expect more and more tit-for-tat tariffs going forward as well. Friday also, we saw that the bizarre story where Steven Mnuchin, the US Treasury Secretary, having to come out and condemn as fake news and exaggeration a story that basically claimed that the US President Donald Trump wanted to get rid of the World Trade Organization, pulling out, the US pulling out. This comes exactly as China released a white paper on the WTO, basically explaining how it fits into the international system, praising it, wanting to reform it, boost it. And China, meanwhile, on Friday also saying that they reject any US claims about China's economy not being open enough or their reform pace being too slow.
China will continue to support and participate in economic globalization in accordance with the established pace of reform and opening up. China welcomes investors from all over the world to enjoy the results of its development.
Nathan King, CGTN, at the White House.
That brings us to the end of this week's business wrap-up. See you next week, same time. My name is Mark Arnold Wadulo. Bye-bye.
So the FinScope reports measure the access and usage of financial services, both formal and informal, by Ugandan adults. If we're looking at great economic growth. If we want to reach middle income status by 2020, then having adults who are able to participate in the formal economy is a must. Most of the gains that we have seen in this report has shown 78% of adults are formally included. But if you look at the disparity between formal access to services versus informal, like SACOs or VSLAs, then there is a big disparity. There is a huge difference between people who are able to access banks, mobile money, insurance from accredited providers, or even other kinds of financial service products. So if we want them to be owners of businesses, if we want them to participate in the economy or to have trade between the EAC, then being a participant in all types of formal financial services is essential. It will drive economic growth.